convoluted path in the absence of light, guided by determination, led by illumination.
As I pored over the records compiled for the 87th through the 89th capitulo, I was fascinated by what I began to see. It was my mastery project to trace the intertwining strands of influence that created that most monumental period in our history. But I had literally no idea how involved the project would end up being. How was I to know, the day I declared my one-year mastery project, that I was really declaring what I would do for my entire lifetime? And yet still, as connected and codependent as those events were, there are still a few dangling strands that seem as if they should have been connected to the rest. As I write this epilogue to my lifetime study, I charge those who come after me, who take up this vocation, to continue to examine those few unexplained threads. I believe that it is possible to discover their proper place in the tapestry of our life. Tobias Destrella, Historical Significance, 1st edition.
By the end of the week, they were preparing a celebration. The jet would land in Barcelona and pick up Darin before continuing to Estolia. Both the king, Leon, and the keeper, Nico, discussed the arrival itself. In deference to their age, they agreed the most fitting place for Kedarin to meet her parents would be within the palace itself. Leon and Mary would greet the jet upon its arrival. For the journey to and from the airport, Leon chose the grand royal carriage, pulled by a full complement of 6 white horses. Once in the palace, to keep introductions to a minimum, Leon decided that only Zeke and Kedarin, Leon and Cailey, and of course Mary and Darin would attend at first. The remaining members of the household would be introduced in due course. The jet was due to land around mid-morning. Earlier that morning, Darin's gorgeous and Estolian stallion and a couple of other horses had been transported from the stables in Barcelona. While they waited for the jet's arrival, Mary enjoyed the chance to chat with Leon. Like many in Estolia, he seemed unconcerned with titles, even though he was the king.
Normally we would have arranged for your grandparents to arrive at dawn. Dawn carries deep symbolism in our nation. But we had to balance tradition with practicality. In the end, it made more sense to allow them a full night's rest in Barcelona so they could arrive refreshed.
Estolia is really unique, isn't it?
She said. He smiled at that.
I spent a number of years in California. I found the outer world quite strange compared to how logically things are done here in Estolia.
I love it here,
she said with a soft sigh of contentment.
Nico tells me it's perfectly all right for me to spend time first learning to ride and then to study dressage. He says that since the conditions of my research grant stipulate I must use an Estolian exclusively, he can't object to the time I spend learning to ride. I'll begin my research into Estolia once I've completed 9 weeks of dressage lessons from Darin.
Nico is looking forward to spending time with you so that the two of you can put together a definitive history of Estolia,
Leon said.
Your whole family is spending a lot of time on me,
she pointed out.
We should,
he said.
You are bringing closure to Kedarin in a way she never expected. You will also fill a need we have by helping us write the history of our nation.
She flushed, unaccustomed to people taking pleasure in her company. More than once she had been told that she possessed tunnel vision, focusing on one thing to the exclusion of all else. The sleek private jet appeared, approaching the runway and landing with economy and grace. As it taxied towards them, her thoughts strayed to Estolia's peculiar dichotomy, eschewing motorized vehicles on the ground, yet maintaining several airplanes and helicopters. Turning to Leon, she said,
How strange that you have airports but no cars.
We have re-evaluated that decision every 30 years or so since motor cars became popular. Each new generation believes that what we have here on the island works. Why change it if it works? Our most recent major changes were adding a railroad in the late 1800s, and then adding the 2 airports and the few support ground vehicles necessary. We were grateful to be able to convert to wholly solar vehicles. Air transport has always seemed more critical to our needs than ground transport that would pollute our land and air.
I think it gives Estolia a certain charm,
she said.
There's definitely something special about it.
From her seat in the grand royal carriage, Mary watched as the jet taxied toward them across the runway. The carriage, drawn by 6 white horses, was large enough for her grandparents, Darin, Leon, herself, and the driver.
Shall we greet your grandparents properly?
Leon said. He climbed out of the carriage and offered his hand to guide her down the steps. Together they walked toward the jet, where ground crew were fitting the stairs into place. Mary watched as her grandparents descended carefully. They were vibrant people with, she hoped, 20 more years of solid life ahead, though age had taught them not to hurry. The moment their feet touched the tarmac, she ran to them and wrapped them both in a hug, overjoyed to see them.
Meredith, you're looking more beautiful and happier than I've ever seen you. Did you finally find yourself?
Her grandfather asked.
You know, grandfather, I believe I have.
She grinned at him.
I'm so very glad you and grandmother were willing to come out here. I'd like to introduce you to my companion.
Leon introduced himself by name only, choosing not to mention his titles. As her grandparents chatted with him, Mary's attention drifted, drawn unavoidably toward the 3rd person descending the airstairs. She froze, staring at Darin in disbelief. She'd been drawn to him before, but attraction was far too small a word for what she felt now. If this was not love, she didn't know what love was. He was staring at her with a hunger that made her pulse quicken. Almost in a trance, she crossed the tarmac and looked up at him, but...
You're looking well, Darin,
she said. He caught her hands, drawing her a little closer, then glanced toward her grandparents and hesitated, as if the impulse to kiss her had just passed. Taking a steadying breath, he squeezed her hands and said,
You look quite well yourself, Mary. Estolia agrees with you.
Within 10 minutes they had climbed into the carriage and were heading back to the palace. Her grandmother glanced her way several times, noting how Darin held her hand. She had begged her grandparents to make the journey, but had not explained why. Her grandmother clearly believed she had asked them out because of a romantic attachment to Darin. A blush warmed her cheeks.
How are you and Kamchatka coming along?
Darin asked her. That was one topic she could talk about to the exclusion of all else.
I'm no longer sore at night after riding. I've been told I have a natural seat and light hands. I've also been told Kamchatka has an inherent gift.
I have received excellent reports about your progress. I am greatly encouraged by what I have heard. The abilities of the horse can only compensate for the inexperience of the rider to a certain point. I'm told that you learn with remarkable speed. By the time he is ready to compete in local dressage competitions, you will be ready as well.
Compete?
That startled her. He laughed easily.
There is something quite rewarding about being able to compete with others. We have a number of competitions here in Estolia, and there are additional ones both in the Balearic Islands and in Spain. For now, we will just work on teaching you some of the basics.
Where exactly are we going right now?
Her grandfather asked. She turned her attention from Darin, still aware of the fact that he had her hand in his.
We're going to the palace.
Palace?
Her grandmother exclaimed. Mary's attention swiveled to Leon. The introductions earlier had failed to identify his role as king. In retrospect, his silence seemed deliberate. Leon answered with a faint smile.
Estolia, which your granddaughter is currently researching, is a most singular nation. We do not have a tourist industry, no hotels, and very few inns. There are only 2 places suited to house visitors. A villa in El Chixonia near our major airport in the northeast, and the palace itself here in the Amador region.
I am assuming that the king, if there is one, is okay with this?
Her grandfather asked dryly. Darin laughed, clapping Leon on the shoulder.
My cousin Leon is most humble. He does not like to make a great deal of it, but his introduction was a bit abbreviated. His full name and titles are Leonidas Agamemnon Zakarian, Duke, Sovereign and King of Estolia.
Mary was amused by the wash of colour on Leon's face.
They're very casual here in Estolia,
She added.
Your mother didn't know why you wanted us to come out so urgently. She wasn't surprised you didn't invite her, of course.
Her grandmother said. Mary's mother was unlikely to ever fly out at a request from her. She was too busy, and none of Mary's passions were of interest to her.
Grandmother, grandfather,
She broke off, a blush warming her cheeks. She looked up at Darin, searching for words. He surprised her by leaning toward her and kissing her lingeringly. When he drew back, he smiled.
I imagine you'll explain in your own time,
Her grandmother said. Mary caught the knowing glint in her grandmother's eyes and realized she had drawn the wrong conclusion, that Mary had urged them to come because of a romance with Darin. When she turned toward him, he was still watching her, his expression warm and possessive. He smiled softly and reached to caress her face. She did not even realize when she reached up and reciprocated, her fingers grazing his face. Only as the tactile memory flashed back did she register what she had done, how natural it had been. To touch him, and for him to touch her. Her gaze locked with his for a long moment. In his eyes, she recognized desire, and something more she could not yet name. When she finally looked away, she drew a sharp breath, only then realizing she'd been holding it. Her attention shifted from the man who had just wordlessly declared his interest and met her grandmother's eyes. They shared a smile, the familiar warmth of it steadying her.
With one resounding call, clarity and vision, as obstacles fall, reveal